Hello, one and all. I want to share some, what for me have been quite wonderful experiences, which have made a big difference to me. And I appreciate that at this moment in time, not many of you may be able to fully make the most of what I'm sharing. However, hear it, let it go in, you never know. This is to do with the nature of reality and what else is there. So I should really start by saying that our perception of reality is an interpretation and it varies. And there are, in very wide strokes, we've got the atheists who say, this is life, I live it, I die. There is nothing else. My consciousness, well, if there's nothing else, you're a machine. So if you're an atheist, you're a machine. You're a machine that may have a level of self-awareness, but this is relative. Then we've got the religious perspective where he says, actually, it's still only one life, but I've got a soul, and when I die, I will shoot off to heaven, or I will go down to eternal barbecue because I've been a naughty person, according to that dogma. So the third one is that we do have a soul and there's reincarnation. But even that's a little bit wishy-washy, because it's still a little bit like the second option, the religious option, in that the soul's within you and it goes through the various incarnations. I should add at this point that this is often used to manipulate people, because if you really read far and wide, what comes through is that they all sell you the same thing: life after death, immortality. And I hate to say this because I was a follower of Gurdjieff, that not many of you may know, but nevertheless. And what captivated people's mind was that even he sold the idea, I don't know whether he sold it or that's what people interpreted, that man would, in general terms, man would develop himself in this life so that he would build a soul that would then survive death. So, and I'll tell you, he was my hero. I never had a father when I was young, and I grew up reading Gurdjieff from my late teens, and I molded myself on him. He is my hero. Doesn't stop me from criticizing the interpretation of it, which is no different from religion. Yeah, you will be saved after this life. So, having put my cards on the table, then there is another option, which is my option, which is my perception, according to Charlie, which I will explain about a little bit later, which is that humans do have a soul, except they don't. Because to understand this, we need to appreciate that we are machines. We really are machines. We're ego machines. We're mechanistic. Our physical body is designed to make life easy for us by doing movements automatically. So we don't have to think about it. You don't have to think about picking up a spoon and putting it in your mouth. You've learned that. You've learned that behavior. You don't have to think about riding a bicycle once you can ride it. You have learned the behavior. If you had to focus on each separate movement, life would be impossible. So that's the physical bit. Then we have the emotions. Emotions, they're hormonally reactive. It's a reaction to the environment. And then we have the mind. You think, oh yeah, my mind's great, yeah. Your mind is a software, it's a piece of software which is programmed when we're young. We are all programs. The way we think, our belief system, look at the word, listen to the word belief system. It's not rooted on any reality, it's simply something that we have picked up from somewhere else and we then believe it. So, I'm born in this country, therefore I'm a staunch nationalist for this particular country. I'm taught a particular religion, so then I'm a staunch believer in that particular religion, and so on and so forth, right? So we pick up belief systems and they become part of who we are. All belief systems do is stop us from thinking. They stop us from being individuals. They manage our perception of reality. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's a way of managing our fear. So there's value in it to some extent, but it stops us from expanding our horizons as to what reality is. So I'm going to look at this from a different perspective, and appreciating that we are machines, I say that we are vehicles. A machine is no more like, you can drive a machine, right? You can drive a tractor, you can drive a car. Machines can be driven. And so the purpose of the human machine is to be driven by a soul. So I'm going to put that to one side just for a little bit. I'm going to talk about the universe. As machines, as human beings in this universe, we follow the sequence of events that happens with everybody, every physical aggregation, whether it is animate or inanimate. There is a process of aggregation, it grows, and eventually it dissolves, and the process gets repeated from those little bits. So, we die, we go to the soil, and from our little bits, eventually something else comes up. So that is the process of machinery, of the physical three-dimensional world. And this applies to the whole of the universe. Correction. It does not apply to the whole of the universe. It applies to all the matter within the universe. And this is a really important difference, which we need to really get our head around. We think of the universe as the material on the universe. And I'm going to say, no, that is not the universe. That is an aspect of the universe. It is the positive charge, if you like, of the universe. Because the underlying matrix of the universe has no beginning and no end. It is 100% infinite. It's really hard to get our head around infinity, okay? Because we are fallible, as machines. We are born, we die, we have X amount of allotted time as a result of that. But the underlying structure of the universe is infinite. And within that, matter evolves. Now there are some aspects of physics where they're now saying, oh, hold on a minute, the universe is not just a visible thing, like 70% of so-called dark matter or more, I have no idea, actually arises from the universe itself in some way that we have no idea. And the reality is that our theories, our scientific theories, they're far, far from perfect. There is so much that we have no idea about as yet. We're quite ignorant, really. We're very basic, we're very primitive, we just have no idea. We just think we're great because we think we're the only ones, but we're very basic. And this underlying structure of the universe, whatever that is part of God. Big word, change the word, the maker of all. Now, the maker of all is not limited to this universe. There are other universes. However, when I speak of the universe, the way I have, and the physical universe, we're only talking about the three-dimensional universe in which we've got time. Time being the measure between the movement of one body to another place. That physical movement we call time. So time itself has no other, it's a product of our imaginations in a way. I mean, yeah, we can get a clock and say, well, actually, you know, time is real. But it is only a measure in this three-dimensional world. And, sorry, my goats are playing outside. So time is real in this three-dimensional universe. And now I say, and you know, I'm not the first one, there is other dimensions. Mathematics, science, they theorize that there are other dimensions. There are, but perhaps not in the way they imagine. There are other dimensions, and these other dimensions, they're right here, they're right now, and the distance between our dimensions is gossamer. It really is as soft and as thin as a spider's web. Gossamer. Well, the way to think about this might be, think of air. Air is around us, air surrounds us, but air actually is inside of us. We breathe it in, it is in our tissues, it flows, you know, the molecules of air, they flow in our bloodstream, they go into our muscles. Air is everywhere. And there's a huge porosity within ourselves. You know, we see ourselves as solid, but really there are huge gaps within all physical structures at the atomic level. And so the dimensions, they're all here, and they're all going through each other. They all pass through each other. They don't actually pass through each other, they're just all here now, interacting all at the same time. And so when coming back to soul now, when I speak about soul, I am referring to, I don't honestly know what the word is. I'll say a conscious energy. It is a conscious energy that exists in different dimensions. They're like different layers. And so I, as a human being, as a machine, I am a vehicle that can allow a soul to experience within this three dimension from its dimension. So call me irreverent, but I have given names to various souls that I coexist with. And so the first soul I coexist with, I call Eric. And Eric is a soul that exists in the ninth dimension, which is just here and now, which is outside of time. And Eric expresses itself through me, through my unconscious. So Eric accesses itself through me, through my unconscious, but that's not the only place. So that is the whole of Eric. But Eric, who is beyond time, the past, the present, and the future, all other incarnations in which Eric has gone into a body to express itself consciously, I will refer to them as fragments. I'll say, for the sake of for us, so that we can understand what we're talking about, as fragments of consciousness. So fragments of consciousness of Eric have gone into previous bodies in time, and yet here I am today. And so Eric, or should I say a fragment of Eric's consciousness, is also manifesting within me. And this happens via chakras, but not exclusively, because this gets a bit complicated. But a fragment of Eric has access into this dimension via my second chakra, and there it gets stuck. Because to the extent that my ego is in charge of my body, to the extent that my ego, in terms of my mind, my emotions, my body, in terms of the way that they are in charge and they've taken over, i.e. they've become master of this machine, my fragment of Eric remains unconscious. So we know lots of people like that. No one at home. They're just machines. They're reactive. They react to anything here and there, and there's no one there to be objective, to be self-aware, to be aware of other people, to be aware of their internal emotions, their internal processes, whether it's their body, their emotions, or their mind, and to be aware of how another person are experiencing the world. True, it's a projection, because we don't know, by and large. We can know, but we don't know. But we can extend ourselves and put ourselves in that person's shoes, and we can get a pretty good idea of what's happening in them. We can become quite psychic as to what's going through their head or what emotions are coursing through them. And if we look at them, we can see how structurally their body has been misaligned and distorted because of suppressed emotions. So we can actually look at another person and we can pretty much gauge what's going on. But to do that, we need to be present. We need to be here. And that happens when our soul fragment, mustn't forget that, our soul fragment starts to become conscious in this life. To the extent that we succeed in becoming conscious in this life, i.e. our fragment of soul becomes awake, so our heart begins to open and we feel love. And we feel acceptance, and we have the capacity for forgiveness. A machine does not forgive. A machine cannot forgive. A machine is just self-focused. Okay, so that's step number one in terms of the layers, the layer cakes of dimensions. So then above that, in the 12th dimension, there's another soul. Now, I have called this soul my higher self, whereas Eric is not my higher self. Eric is just a part of Eric. But above Eric, Eric himself is one of many Erics, of which Charlie, my higher soul, is composed. So Eric is composed of different fragments of experience across time, and loads of Erics, 2,120, are what constitutes Charlie. So Eric is just one of 2,120. Yeah? And Charlie is the one that I communicate with via Eric. Charlie cannot communicate directly with me, but Charlie can communicate via Eric, via my subconscious, my unconscious, directly with me. And there's a process, I'll talk about this in a minute perhaps. So those are the three. So Eric is at the 12th dimension. And for quite a while, I couldn't understand. Well, I knew, having been taught by Charlie, I knew that my fragment of soul was coming through my second chakra, and that as I become more and more conscious, so my fragment of soul is experiencing through my heart. But how does that happen? And I couldn't get my head around that, because, and I've spoken about this in other videos, it's to do with the critters, which is a very low parasitic form that through the second chakra can also engage with the machine, with the ego, and keep a person subdued in fear. So how does this happen? I couldn't get my head around that. And here am I now engaging with Charlie, and so I know that Charlie has told me that Eric proper comes through the sixth chakra, i.e. through the unconscious, which leads to imagination, and that Charlie himself has a link via the seventh chakra. But how does that relate to me here and now? And I couldn't get my head around that. So to go there, I'm going to take a little detour and talk about levels of consciousness. David Hawkins, now dead, he, in the 60s, he began to develop this, and he used kinesiology, which is muscle testing. You get someone's arm and you get them to say yay or nay. And by doing that, you are engaging with the unconscious of the person to respond. Kinesiologists call it the intelligence within. I beg to differ. It is our soul engaging with us, except our soul is by and large unconscious, because we ourselves are pretty much unconscious, not just in this lifetime, but in previous lifetimes. So another diversion there. And that's more to do with karma. I may come back to that. Levels of consciousness. David Hawkins worked out by using muscle, he did his own muscle testing. He used this, which I've learned myself. It's a wonderful technique to learn. It's in my website. So by using this, I can do yes and no, yes and no. I don't know whether you can see that. It basically is that movement, and I just force them apart. And what I'm doing is I am engaging with my unconscious, Charlie, through Eric, through my body, will give me answers. So I can ask questions, and I do ask questions, and I connect with Charlie every day, and I have long-winded conversations, and he helps me in terms of healing myself and in terms of healing other people. He's an amazing resource, he really is. And it's the next step for a kinesiologist. It is an indispensable next step for a kinesiologist. It really takes us, sorry, I'm going to have to move because the sun's in my eyes. I hope you can still see me, I can't tell. So by using muscle testing, as David Hawkins did, we can work out, well, what is my level of consciousness and what is other people's levels of consciousness. And I use this to find out whether they're lost and stuck within their ego, which is below level 200, you're stuck in your ego. You can't even look. You're just totally self-centered, self-focused. Fear is running your life. Once you go above 200 to 220, so something like that, up to 550, you are incrementally finding that your head is going above the parapet. You're separating from the ego. You have moments when you can feel real love. Not just I am needy, love me, but real love where you can really enjoy another person for who they are without any judgments. And we accept the world as it is. and there is no blame. The world is as the world is. So as we go up towards 550, so our capacity for detachment from our ego increases exponentially. And if you happen to be an alternative therapist, it means that if you use the pendulum, or if you do muscle testing, you are now engaging with the unconscious to give you answers. However, you'll never be more than 50% accurate up to level 550. Hence the value and importance for an alternative practitioner to learn what I am sharing, which is to raise our level of consciousness, to increase our accuracy, not just when we work with other people, but with ourselves. There's a lot of people, they work with their guides or with their angels. I personally, I'll be quite honest, it's all delusion. There are no angels or guides out there. Now, this goes in the face of millions of people who firmly have this spiritualistic viewpoint, which to me is rather woo-woo and fanciful. And I've been there, I've done it all. I'm nearly 70. I've pretty much done it all. And what I'm down to now is my higher self, soul, God, and ego. And accepting our ego, accepting that we have an ego, accepting that we are machines, accepting that this machine will die, that my personality does not survive death. If you go to a medium and say, oh yeah, you know, Auntie Jane wants to talk to you, it's not possible. The personality of Auntie Jane died with the body. And Auntie Jane probably never became conscious in that lifetime. More than likely, because 98% of the world population is unconscious. The soul does not die. There is immortality, but it's not for us human beings. It's for the souls that have the opportunity to experience life through this machine, through us. And if there's one thing for us to do in this lifetime, is to become conscious. And to allow the proper passenger to be in charge of this machine. Life is so much more wonderful when we open up to the love, because that's how the machine becomes subservient to the fragment of soul and open to the higher souls. It's only one way, and that is through love, because that's all there is in the universe. Anyway, so levels of consciousness. So we're rising through the levels. So once we go above 550, we have, as human beings, i.e. the consciousness within us, as the ego reaches its proper place of servant rather than master, our fragment of soul can become increasingly more and more conscious. And the level of consciousness of that fragment of soul within us can reach a maximum of 889. And at this moment on earth, there's only 4 people, according to Charlie, who have reached the hallowed ground, this place of being aware. Their fragment of soul is so fully conscious and connected that it has reached the level of 889. You say, well, why only 889? because we're all human beings, we're all imperfect, we all have egos, and our egos are damaged. And so our egos are needy. Everybody's needy. I don't care who it is. I don't care how spiritual they think they are. We're all human beings. We're all on the same boat. We all have an ego, and that ego has moments when it will become insistent and take charge, however temporarily. That is why there's a ceiling of 889. However, 889, is respectable, right? So anyway, so by the time a person reaches the level of 880, and this is the value for practitioners, by the time we reach 880, we have a level of accuracy of 98%. What that means is our egos are pretty much servants most of the time. Yeah, servants rather than masters. And so our communication with our souls is now immediate, direct, and accurate. We get accurate information. So this is highly, highly valuable if you happen to be an alternative practitioner. You can see the value of raising your level of consciousness, allowing your fragment of soul to take charge. Not only as you rise do you release your traumas, you release your ideological belief systems which limit you, which control you, which control all of us if we have them. And we're not aware that we have them because the nature of beliefs is that they stop us from feeling fear. They control, they narrow our perception. So it's really hard to move beyond our belief systems. Clearly it's not impossible, but it's really hard. So the reason why I'm sharing all of this with you is because, as I said earlier on, I was struggling. I've been at a level of around 820 for a long time, and so I kept asking Charlie about souls. And well, how does the soul, how does this happen? I just cannot quite see it. Anyway, one day in meditation, I suddenly had this intuitive insight. And this intuitive insight was that these other dimensions are not separate. That they're right in us right now. We are so blended that we cannot tell the difference. They can, but we can't. Because, we're in ego, so we're sort of stuck. But the dimensions, they're all blended with each other. They're sort of like gradients. It's the same color, think of the color green from really dark to really, really light. At what point do you separate one fraction of that slightly lighter than something's a little bit further down? So once I had this realization, I suddenly felt in my heart the connection with Eric, the connection with Charlie. So both my soul and my higher souls, I had opened in my heart so that I was having a direct feeling connection with Charlie and Eric. My fragment of soul was connecting as a gateway through my heart so that all these gradients of dimensions were all aligned. It's like the doors were all in the same way, the doors were open and woof, straight through. And that lifted me all the way up to 880. So I was 880 all the way up to 880. Once I reached that point, my level of accuracy increased to 98%. And so it's been like that for quite a while. And so I encourage you to really go out of your way to start this process of learning muscle testing so that you can begin to ask questions yourself and find someone to begin to deal with your trauma. And there are specific ways of dealing with this. You know, this isn't dealing with one's traumas, you know, it's not like go to a psychotherapist for, you know, the next 5 years and you just sit there for an hour at a time and they're waiting for you to say something meaningful so that we can actually explore your emotions. No, that's all hat. Okay, I mean, we're now quite advanced in this respect. We can actually move through trauma quite quickly, and I do. With my clients, I do move through trauma. Now, I'm not saying this for everybody to come to me, because I just cannot do that. However, and I am doing a second book that will help with this. It will help. I want to train people who will go and work with other people. But I cannot just let everyone in. I'm digressing. So that's when I reached 880. And then I began to slip backwards to about 820 again. And I don't know what's going on. And there are specific reasons for that to do with the moon, which I will talk another time. But anyway, I very quickly went up to 880, and I still had questions. And the questions now were to do with, well, if Charlie is at the 12th dimension, what's above that? Fairly normal question, right? And I found out that there is, we're capable of connecting with up to 18 dimensions. Don't know what the 18th is, but I found out what the 17th was when I asked. And the 17th dimension is the soul of the earth. So this earth has got a soul, and the soul exists at the 17th dimension. And as soon as I made that connection, woof, I rose to 885. So what I am sharing with you is cosmic consciousness in its truest sense, which is related to levels of consciousness. So we can gauge where we are, how we're moving. And so to open up, you see, this is not to open, you see, we can think about these things, you know, with our minds, we can reason, and we can have these abstract ideas, but it's not to do with that. It's not to do with mental gymnastics. This is to do with direct feeling. It's a direct connection. And once we make it, it's instantaneous. It's like, woof, I'm there. So that took me to 885. And then I'm going to come back to the very beginning of this conversation to do with the universe. Because the 18th dimension is to do, let me just double check. So Charlie, the 18th dimension, is it to do with the soul of the universe? It is. Of this universe. I mean, there's many other universes. And for me, that is as close to God as we can connect with. All the souls, Fragment, Eric, Charlie, Henry. I decided to call the Earth Soul Henry. Call me irreverent, but they don't mind and they think it's a laugh. It just makes it easy for me, because I mean, they don't have names, so Gaia, Henry. You want to call her a female? Knock yourself out. For me, it's Henry. So I've got these 4 levels, and so they all take me closer to God, because every soul is a fragment of God, but it's a fragment of greater consciousness, greater experience, because souls do grow by connecting through the physical world in the 3 dimension. And so as soon as I connected with the infinity of the universe, that took me up to 888. Damn, just one smidgen short of 889. So I don't know what will take me to the next level. So what I'm sharing with you is a pathway, a route for direct connection to the maker of all. And the route is as short as our hearts. And the only way to get there is by separating from our egos. And we separate from our egos via forgiveness and via self-love. Totally indispensable. Without self-love, and here's the trick, self-love can only happen when we're in our hearts. The ego cannot love itself. The ego is full of needs, needy, fearful, chains. It's a prison. The ego is a prison. It's a self-imposed prison via the mind. However, by letting go of the pain and suffering which most of the world is in, as we let go of that pain and suffering, as we learn to forgive other people and ourselves, in that process we create separation. And as we create separation, love comes in, forgiveness comes in, acceptance comes in, joy comes in. And the more we work on this, the more we release, the higher we soar, the more loving we are within ourselves, for ourselves, and the more capable of experiencing real love. I think I'll stop there. I'm going to call that a day. If you stayed, if you've listened till the end, I thank you. So I've got a book coming out. It's called The Feeling Heart, and it's coming out on the 13th of November. It's got a little bit about my life and all the various concepts as to what reality is about, and it's got a large section also to do with how to help ourselves to be healthy physically, emotionally, mentally, and beyond. I will leave some notes on that. And there's my website, salmarch.co.uk, and there is my YouTube, which you can access by, well, if you're watching this, you're watching my YouTube. All the best, and bye-bye for now.